reduction in international trade throughout this financial year, coupled with slowdown of the national economy, has defied the ambitious revenue collection trajectory of the Uganda Revenue Authority.
The targets that were given, we may actually be short. And why are we going to be short? Because the assumptions that we were hoping to see at the beginning of the year have not quite manifested. A target of roughly 13.2 trillion based on economic growth of 5.5%. But when you see an outturn of 4.5%, it is only likely that even the revenue may not perform to that level.
URA's performance report for this financial year ending details a mixed bag. 90 billion shillings has since been provided to help in its tax administration achieve better compliance and indeed its target of 14.6 trillion shillings in the new financial year.
VAT tax measures, most of them were actually tax reducing measures. We witnessed a number of exemptions coming in. Nevertheless, we had a target of 12 billion, but so far we see this outturning at 2.5 billion shillings collected, a performance of 21%. Income tax, 40% billion to date, and that's because the financial year, the tax year has not ended. We are seeing about 15%, rather 15 billion collected out of the 40. The common external tariff adjustment, the target was 10%. We are seeing a performance of 49% at about 5 billion shillings collected. Non-tax revenue adjustments, we see a target of 21.5, and so far 9.3 collected on those.
Development partners appear determined to keep off budget support in favor of program and project assistance, asking Uganda to widen its tax to GDP ratio, which now stands at 13%.
We all agree that economic growth, a pickup in economic growth, is absolutely essential for Uganda in order to sustain the same levels of poverty reduction that we have seen in the past. Uganda's population is growing with more than 1 million people per year. Unless you grow your economy and the services that you deliver to the people at an even higher rate than your population, you will of course not see the progress that the country is anticipating and longing for.
But with the increasing constraint on budget execution, with service delivery falling short because of cuts across some critical ministries, departments and agencies, there is still concern over government plans to borrow above 1 trillion shillings from the domestic market.
First, to borrow, you must first put your priority, and even your priorities must be financed on a sustainable way to ensure that the debt is sustainable. Of course, taking a number of ratios which we take debt service as a ratio of the budget of our domestic revenue, those kind of ratios, debt service as a ratio of our exports.
Financial experts also argue that by government crowding out an already weak private sector of access to affordable credit, it will negatively impact on growth and national revenue targets. They also recommend that government could indeed source up to 1.5 trillion shillings from the non-banking options, such as occupational schemes, insurance funds, investment clubs, and collective investment schemes.
And this has been growing in Uganda at about 30% for the past 5 years. So we're getting to a point where the government and the private sector need to pay attention to this source of funding. Right now it is about 30% of GDP. It might get to about 40% in the next 5 or 7 years. So the way in which you access it, Capital Markets Authority is essentially the screen through which you go through to access this funding.
The civil society budget advocacy group CSBAG, together with the Tax Justice Alliance Uganda, warned that the incentives issued by government to selected would-be taxpayers is unfair.
Because why should an investor come to Uganda, or why should somebody invest in Uganda if you have failed to provide a very good business environment? Your interest rates are very high, your exchange rate, is extremely. So what do you have to do? You use some underhand method, and this is where tax exemptions now come from. You are telling an investor, say, don't worry about the rest. When you come, we won't pay taxes for the next 20 or 30 years. But who will not come for that? So I think that the major point we are trying to stress here is that you can call them good or bad, but we lack a legal framework on how these exemptions can be transparently be given to any person who would want them.
For nearly 5 years running, the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development has been piling pressure on the tax body on reforms around tax administration and compliance. It waits to be seen how much you will be able to benefit from these initiatives as a taxpayer. Reina Ojon, NTV Tonight.